Moving into the next chapter, which the name of the chapter is Discipline. This is, you're going to recognize this one. Once a man condones remisses, his own belief in discipline begins to wither. The officer who tolerates slackness in the dress of his men soon ceases to tend his own appearance. And if he is not called to account, his sloppy habits will shortly begin to inflict his superior. There is only one correct way to wear the uniform. When any deviations in dress are condoned within the services, the way is open to the destruction of all uniformity and unity. It's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. You condone remisses. You're opening. Now, this might be a little bit extreme when he says that when you're out of uniform or you allow these units, so the way is open to the destruction of all uniformity and unity. I'm not sure I 100% agree with that. And I was always very pro uniform and making sure that guys were squared away in their uniforms. I was probably one of the most stringent in the SEAL teams. In the SEAL teams, we're not real good at wearing uniforms and looking good in uniforms and being squared away in uniforms. So it's kind of hard for me to agree that opens up the way for the destruction of all uniformity. But the lesson here is more about the uniforms. It's more about just, it's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate.
Yeah, that slippery slope situation.
Yes, it is.
Well, opening the way isn't necessarily ensuring something.
True,
you know?
True.
So,
I'll give it to you.
Technically.
You get me on the technicalities sometimes. That's fine.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that. I'm plastic in my mind.
Right.
I can accept that.
Plastic, you know how some people say plastic, like, oh, that guy's plastic, meaning like he's fake or something like that.
Oh, yeah,
this is more like plasticity, right?
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Written in 1950 before plastic was everything that we used.
Yeah.
I used to have this theory that anything that was made of metal was better. It'd just make everything of metal. I wanted to make everything that was made metal.
Right. Don't they say that same thing about like food and bacon? Like anything with bacon is better.
Similar.
It's the same kind of thing.
Could be correct.
Yeah.
Bacon's good.
Yeah.
Back to the book. No leader ever fails his men, nor will they fail him who leads them in respect for the disciplined life. Between these two things, discipline in itself and a personal faith in the military value of discipline, lies all the difference between military maturity and mediocrity. A salute from an unwilling man is as meaningless as the moving of a leaf on a tree. It is a sign only that the subject has been caught by a gust of wind, but a salute from the man who takes pride in the gesture because he feels privileged to wear the uniform of the United States, having found the service good, is the epitome of military virtue. Until men are severely tried, there is no conclusive test of their discipline, nor proof that their training at arms is satisfying a legitimate military end. Military forces remain relatively undisciplined until physically toughened and mentally conditioned to unusual exertion. Consider the road march. No body of men could possibly enjoy the dust, the heat, the blistered foot, and the aching back. But hard road marching is necessary if a sound foundation is to be built under the discipline of fighting forces, particularly those whose labors are in the field. And the gain comes quickly. The rise in spirits within any organization, which is always to be observed after they rebound from a hard march, does not come essentially from the feeling of relief that the strain is past, but rather from the satisfaction that a goal has been crossed. It must be accepted that discipline does not break down under the strain of placing a testing demand upon the individual. It is sloth and not activity that destroys discipline. Think about that one. So it's not the strain, it's not the pressure that you put that breaks down the discipline. It's the laziness, it's the sloth that breaks discipline. Troops can endure hard going when it serves an understandable end. This is what they will boast about, mainly when the fatigue is ended. A large part of training is necessarily directed toward conditioning them for unusual hardship and privation. They can take it in stride, but no power on earth can reconcile them to what common sense tells them is unnecessary hardship, which might have been avoided by greater intelligence in their superiors. So if you're telling people to do something and they realize that there's an easier way to do it, they're going to be angry. When they are overloaded, they know it. When they are required to form a parade 2 hours ahead of time because their commander got over anxious or didn't know how to write an order, again, they know it. And they are perfectly right if they go sour, because this kind of thing happens a little too often within the command. Within our system, that discipline is nearest perfect, which assures to the individual the greatest freedom of thought and action, while at all times promoting his feeling of responsibility toward the group. Do you hear that? The greatest form of discipline is the one that gives the greatest freedom of thought and action. That's what we want. We want the discipline to equal freedom.
That's interesting, his take on, like, when you go through some hard stuff, the satisfaction isn't that it's over. It's the fact that you did that.
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah, it's like, I told you my whole sleep thing. Well, it used to be where if I didn't get my 8.5 hours, I was done for the day. But so now, let's say I get 2 hours sleep, and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna still do this workout, whatever, this conditioning, something hard. Sure, it's gonna be hard. Sure, I'm not looking forward to it, but yeah, the satisfaction is afterwards. I'll even go to how it said you're gonna have something to brag about or something like that. Bro, that's true. You go and tell your friends, hey, I did this. I only had 2 hours sleep.
Got after it anyways.
Yeah, you do kind of have that feeling like you want to brag about it.
No doubt.
Like, I did some hard stuff.
We shouldn't be surprised. We're kind of getting excited when these things completely make sense.
Yeah.
These are generals that knew and understand human nature.
Yeah.
And these are things that we look at and we learn and we've experienced.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't come as a surprise.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy it's like tunnel vision, where it'll happen and you almost like you don't even realize it'll happen. Like, everyone does that. Everyone does something hard,
for sure.
Gets through a hard work day, did something under these circumstances that they hate. They might even be complaining about it. Like, oh, this was going on, such a stressful day. But when you get it actually done, you brag about it. At the very least, you feel like you want to brag about it. And pursue that, keep that up.
Now, there's some counter to that. Here we go. Back to the book. If the man is cramped by monotonous routine or made to feel that he cannot move unless an order is barked, he cannot develop these qualities and he will never come forward as a junior leader. So if you put too much discipline on somebody, you're going to crimp their leadership capabilities. Say that all the time. In the words of Dupique, who saw so deeply into the hearts of fighting men, if one does not wish bonds broken, one should make them elastic and thereby strengthen them. Dang. That's a guy, he wrote a thing called Battle Studies. Well, actually, he didn't finish writing it because he got killed in action. Fighting Napoleon he was French fighting again in the I want to say fighting the Prussians. But a great quote from him that I wrote down: nothing can wisely be prescribed in any army without exact knowledge of the fundamental instrument of man and his state of mind, his morale at the instant of combat. So Dupique is a guy that really started looking at the mentality of guys. We might have to get it. We might have to dive into him at some point.